Today on The State of Us, track your mood to improve your happiness. Businesses can't shake tips across industries. Can tracking mood cheer you? That's the question posed by an article in the Wall Street Journal as Apple is pushing into mental health with an emotion gauge for iPhone and Apple Watch. And also, what's going on with the tip economy? Why businesses can't stop asking for tips. Employers are relying on the practice to avoid paying higher wages, according to the Wall Street Journal. So you got a lot to talk about today. Welcome to The State of Us. I'm your host, Justin T. Weller, joined today by the one and only, your friendly redneck liberal, and sadly, a St. Louis Cardinals fan, Mr. Lance Jackson.
Oh, well, it's all right. We're still going to wear the colors proudly. Great history. That's why I'm a history teacher. But, we're talking about the economy again, right? And this one's not on the list, so I'm just going to throw it out there now. But isn't it great? Shouldn't all these big superstores where they have the self-checkout lanes, I keep looking for my store credit.
Yeah?
Yeah. Because if I'm scanning my own groceries and I'm bagging them myself and then I take care of the payment transaction.
You think you should be getting a discount?
Shouldn't I get a store, like I do 10 minutes of work and the average cashier and bagger makes $12-15 an hour? That would be like $1, $1 or $2 for the 10 minutes that it takes me to check myself out. That should be given to me as store credit.
They might argue that you would have felt a larger increase in prices on other products if they had not implemented
I understand what they'd argue,
system.
but since I'm doing their freaking job, they should pay me for it.
They're redefining whose job it is.
I understand that, but just so people out there know, the world didn't used to be that way, okay? Yeah. Old man talking here, ring the bell. Didn't have to bag your own, used to bag your own stuff and take it out. They used to push it out in a cart and put it in your car for you. All for the same price for the groceries.
If we can cheer up Lance.
I'm always cheerful.
By giving him a smart device and then letting him track his mood so that he can find the things that annoy him.
I don't need a watch. I can track my mood right now.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
The idea of wearing a watch to track my mood annoys me. I don't need a watch to tell me.
Your watch
Come on,
be like,
all this is the 70s.
You're annoyed in all conditions.
You ever had a mood? You never had a mood ring?
I have had a mood ring.
See, mood ring. There you go.
I don't know that that's
this is just a mood ring.
Exactly the same thing.
Oh, okay.
Tracking daily steps can motivate us to walk more. Tracking sleep can reveal problems such as sleep apnea. Can tracking our moods make us happier? Well, that is the central question being asked. There are now many tech ways to log where you fall on the happy, sad spectrum each day. Fitbit offers mood logging in its stress management tool. Period tracking apps such as Clue and Flow allow women to see how their moods fluctuate with their cycles. Apps like Dailyo focus on mood.
Mood logging?
Mood logging.
So like right now, if I had a Fitbit, which I have one. I don't have one that does that, but if I had one that I could type in, this topic annoys me. I'm annoyed right now. And then when I feel better, I type in, I feel better now because I just let off some steam.
Well, different ones work differently, and Apple is the latest big player to enter the game.
Does it read my mood, or do I have to tell it my mood?
No, you are prompted, generally, you're prompted at different points throughout the day to tell how you're feeling. The purpose
I would be annoyed because every time they contacted me,
that I'm
annoyed that you just prompted me to ask. I was in a good mood until you.
Oh.
Okay, anyway.
So, why could this actually help? Because that's the other side, right? Like, tracking your steps can motivate you to walk more. We know that that's a reality.
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Why?
Well, it's the same principle of humans when you set a goal, and if you have something that's external that keeps you accountable to that, you're more likely to succeed at the goal. If you set a goal, for example, to walk a certain number of steps and you keep it only in your head and you're responsible for counting the steps, you're a lot less likely to achieve that goal than if it's if you want to be old fashioned, if you write down and put on the fridge, I will walk 10,000 steps, and you wear a pedometer on you and you check throughout the day to see how you're doing on your steps, because there's an external. It's kind of like, why do people follow most of the laws most of the time? Well, because somebody else came up with them, right?
Gotcha.
It's an external rule versus an internal, like, you don't have to, your accountability comes from a third party source, even though there's nothing that prevents you from ignoring that third party source. I'm just telling you, I'm just talking psychology. That's all we're talking.
And that's why I asked, because I'm thinking, if I want to ignore it, I can ignore it.
Yeah. And people will, and they do.
But more often than not.
Yeah, you're probably going to get more steps in if you're tracking your steps.
Good explanation. Okay.
So why should you log your mood? Could this actually make a difference? Well, Apple's push into mental health comes as the country is experiencing a youth mental health crisis, and a growing number of adults are struggling with depression. The U.S. Preventative Services Task Force just released recommendations that doctors should screen adults ages 19 to 64 for anxiety disorders, and all adults should be screened for depression. I think it just has to do with that getting old thing is depressing, but it doesn't necessarily make you anxious.
It's not depressing at all. I love it.
Except for the parts about being tired more.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
If you had this watch that you were wearing, the reason they're contending that this could be valuable is because if you already track your exercise and sleep on Apple devices, or
that's one more thing Apple can know about you to control your brain as they develop AI.
Well, they do point out in the article that Apple says that they do not store or track this information.
Oh, well, if Apple says it, I believe it, because I mean that they would speak the truth.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, they're already keeping your steps. They're already keeping what else? Possibly your sleep.
Well, yeah. I mean,
now they're going to keep your mood. So when you're happy, they're going to send you ads to buy things, because you'd be more likely to spend your money, because they'll be able to track and, every Tuesday at 2:00, Justin is happy. So we're going to send him stuff about these old books, and Justin will buy them because on Tuesdays at 2:00, he's registered for 2 years straight now that he's happy.
Interestingly enough, it may be counterintuitive, but if Apple really wanted to exploit it, ABC News reported on not long ago that there's a practice called retail therapy. And in a recent study, researchers uncovered evidence of what shopaholics have known for years, that people are likely willing to spend more money on themselves when they're sad than when they're happy.
Oh, wow.
So
counterintuitive.
You want to talk about really preying on people. Not are we going to try to exploit you when you're happy, but when we find out that you're down, then we're going to take
Once your doctor diagnoses that you're depressed, we're sending you all kinds of ads to buy stuff.
That's right, because we know that you'll
when you put in your watch that you're depressed, bam,
bring the ads.
You will instantly go into debt, because we're going to hook it up.
In serious note, the article does say that, Apple explains that the health app data is encrypted on locked iPhones and iPads, and health data synced to the iCloud is encrypted in transit and on Apple servers, and that people at Apple do not have access to this data.
And you were serious, and I'm serious too. Watch for it to happen.
Well, how valuable is it? I mean,
that's information.
Super valuable.
If I was selling something, I would want that information, just like I would want to know your name and your address and your email, right? Buy a subscription list from a magazine, talking old school, right? That's information that you want.
Yep. The thinking here, right, is that if you use fitness trackers of some kind and they also prompt you to log your mood, the value, there is believed to be some inherent value in just tracking your mood with nothing else. For example, sometimes as part of a therapy, a psychologist or mental health professional may recommend to a patient that, 2 to 3 times a day, they write down what they're doing and what they're feeling.
Yeah, I mean, it's called journaling, right? We know that helps people. Some people. Doesn't help everybody to journal, but it helps a lot of people to journal.
And the benefit is that hopefully you can see if there are patterns that arise in terms of time of day or what you're doing or whatever, but you have to do it long enough and you have to do enough of it and consistently enough. And we went back to when we talked about steps, for example, if you're responsible for, I got to get the journal out, I got to write this down, I got to do it at this time every day, you're not as likely to stick with that and follow through. So part of what I think the value that they're contending is look, if we're already tracking, for example, your heart rate and the fact that you might be stressed or that your exercise or how much, like in the most recent Apple Watch update, they track how much sunlight you're getting every day. So they can tell you if you're getting too much or too little. In other words, now if they're tracking your mood, they may be able to correlate, hey, look, on this day, on the days you're the happiest, you got, 2 or 3 hours of sun. But on these days where you were upset, you only got like 20 minutes. And now, the thinking is that would give you an insight into, this is telling you that these days of the week where you're getting very little sun, you need to do something to change that because it's having a negative impact on your mood. Or these days of the week where you're not getting enough exercise, or these days of the week where these are not novel things. We know that exercise, generally speaking, improves mood. Access to light or a window or nature, generally speaking, improves mood. Those are not new things. It has more to do with, by prompting you on a regular basis to log your mood, you're removing part of that human element of, I don't have time for that right now, or I'll do it later. Part of the thinking here is not that this is a revolutionary idea. It's that we already, for people using this, are collecting the data that's going to help you figure out what the patterns might be that are negatively impacting you. The question is, how much of a difference would that actually make? We give people these insights. Will they actually change what they're doing? Keep it here on The State of Us. We'll be right back. When people keep track of their emotional fluctuations and see linkages, it can, listen to that word, it can lead them to make changes in their behavior, says Michelle Kraisk, a psychology and psychiatry professor at UCLA who has studied the effects of mood tracking. Real-world use of these apps doesn't always match the aspirational use researchers have found. Schuler and his colleagues found that most people really only track their moods a couple of times a week. They also discovered a paradox. While people are drawn to such apps by negative life events, like a divorce, a death, they're more inclined to document positive moods. Similar issues with self-reporting have been found when it comes to tracking diets. People note the healthy foods and conveniently neglect to mention the chips and the sweets.
Yep.
An Apple spokeswoman said the company carefully designed the mood tracking feature to display calm colors and shapes for both pleasant and unpleasant emotions, so people wouldn't feel ashamed of indicating negative feelings. So this is again a psychology thing, not so much really Apple specific. We as people are drawn to try to make something better when things are bad. So that may cause us to download the app and say, I'm going to start, tracking this to figure out what's going on. Or same thing, I'm going to start a diet because I don't feel healthy, right? So I'm going to start tracking what I eat. The tendency though, once you start tracking, is to only log the
positive
good things and not to log less frequently the negative things. So that can be true with eating, also can be very true with mood. I think that if it were to prompt you, again, talking about if it were to prompt you at consistent times throughout the day, that's very different than saying like, once a day you'll get a reminder about, have you logged your mood today?
Right.
That's going to be
because most of us,
much less effective.
You think about a 24-hour period, how many different moods do you have in a day? right? I mean,
for most people, it probably, you know.
I mean, I would think, I don't know, maybe I'm the abnormal one, but my mood's like a roller coaster most days.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it
could stink one minute and be good the next.
Exactly.
Yep.
You know, I mean, and it can't even be, even if you have a regimented day, like you were working, you know, I'm thinking as a school teacher, and if it came at a time when you had one of your better classes, most of the time you're going to be registering that you're in a good mood. But if it comes at a time when, you know, you've constantly, every day you have a meeting with a group of people that you don't like to meet with, well, you're going to say that you're in a bad mood. But doesn't mean that you're that way the entire day, right?
Well, I think, you know, there's other approaches to this, but one of the things that I think is important is if it's done consistently and frequently, there's the other thing. And then that gets into, is it inconvenient? And then do you have a negative association with the logging? But say that you were prompted once an hour, every hour to log, and you did, you know, and all it takes, because it's on your watch, you know, you get a vibration, you look, how are you feeling right now? Happy or not happy?
You hit a color. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and that's it. And then you move on and remind it again next hour, same thing. Hypothetically, right, if you did that, and I am not a mental health professional, but just telling people, the biggest benefit I think this would have is less about trying to correlate specific events to what causes your unhappiness. The more valuable thing would be the ongoing perspective, because at the end of the day, you could get a summary of, here's how much of the day you spent, you know, in a good mood versus not. And the most important thing is getting a perception of, are things as bad as I think they are, or are they better, or are they worse? If the answer is they're worse, that should hopefully lead you to get help. If the answer is they're better, by practicing that perspective, you actually get better at realizing, oh, things aren't as bad as I thought they were. You know, like, it's that age old notion of when you get home, if you have a significant other there and they ask you about how your day, do you start off with what was bad or do you start off with what was good?
Well, and then how long duration is what I'm thinking too, as you're explaining what you would think would be the better way to do this is, am I happy for 4 hours and then I'm sad, negative, upset for 5 minutes? Or vice versa.
Because it may just be when you were prompted to log.
Exactly, right?
You know.
Or it says, wow, most of, 7 out of the 8 hours you were at work, when we prompted you, you were happy.
Yeah.
But when I come home, it's only that one major negative thing that happened that has consumed my mind.
Right.
I was talking to a friend. Well, I was happy then. I was sending a message to my loved one. Oh, I was happy then. But the overarching mood of the day was set by the one negative thing, because it was a big, I got into an argument with my boss over my pay.
Yeah.
So again, you can't even go by how often you're happy or how often you're sad because of the duration or how important that one issue is. Or, hey, at 2:00, I decided I accepted my significant other's proposal for marriage.
Yeah.
Okay, you got one for that. But, that maybe makes you happy for the next 6 months overarching.
Right. Well, how is it weighted?
So how do you measure that? How's it weighted?
Which, again, going back to, we have to be careful with stuff like this, because is the concept positive to improve mental health? Yes. Do we know that doing this will for sure help your mental health? No. Can logging moods, like the professor said, yes, logging your moods can, that's that key word, it can improve things, but not necessarily.
Or you can get a piece of paper and just start keeping a diary.
Right, and you can do that too. While naming negative emotions can serve to damp those feelings over time, even tracking just the good vibrations can be beneficial. Quote, we're more likely to savor the moments associated with those positive events, like a social gathering, the researcher says, and are more likely to engage in those activities again. Some studies have shown mixed results. Researchers in the UK studied a group of teens and young adults with mental health issues and a similar group without reported issues. For both, identifying feelings in a tracking app significantly reduced momentary negative moods and impulses. But over the course of the study, the apps didn't appear to have a significant effect on the participants' emotional regulation, awareness, or clarity. Correlation causation thing that you have to be, we've talked about so many times. You have to be super careful about that in mental health because it's a common tendency and it can be very misleading. Well, I was in a bad mood when I was on this walk. Okay, well, you may know that that's because you got an upsetting phone call. Didn't have anything to do with your walk, but you logged it that way and you looked back on it at the end of the week and you don't remember. And now you're looking at, well, I was on this walk and I was in a bad mood, or this day I got 8 hours of sunshine, but I was not in a very good mood that day. So maybe I shouldn't. There's that danger too of assuming that because these two things happened at the same time, that this thing caused that thing. Great to have the data. Are you going to talk with a professional about the data? Because if you're not planning to, then I might contend that you'd be better off not making any changes as a result of the data. You want to have it to be aware of it? Fine. You're going to have it to make adjustments to your behavior? I would seek a third-party opinion before you do that.
I agree.
Because I think you're a lot more likely to accidentally make a lot of changes in your life and then get additionally upset because those changes didn't make things better. You're like, why isn't this working? I knew that I was upset when I did this, so I didn't do it, and now I'm still upset. That might not have been why you were upset, or that might not have been why you were happy. So let's talk about why businesses can't stop asking for tips. Mm-hmm. The tip culture. We're going to track everything.
Put that tip jar out there. How does that make you feel?
We got a tip.
How does that make you feel?
That's right. You get prompted every time you ask for a tip. How are you feeling about that tip? Keep it here on The State of Us. We'll be right back. Why businesses can't stop asking for tips. That's a question, or headline rather, of a Wall Street Journal article. The U.S. economy is more tip reliant than it's ever been, according to an economist and professor of international finance at George Washington University. But there's a growing sense that these requests are getting out of control and that corporate America is dumping the responsibility for employee pay onto the customer.
Well, it's what you said about in the beginning when I complained about having to bag my own groceries and check myself out. I'm getting a product for less money because now I'm paying part of the wages. If we force them, I don't know. I'm being somewhat facetious, but I see the point.
Yeah.
But just so people know, do we even teach young people the proper art of tipping? Does that even exist since we have two different generations here?
Yeah, I don't
because
know.
I know what tipping means, but is my idea of what tipping means, is that the same as yours?
Well, it might be the same as mine. I don't know that it's the same.
Is it the same? I growing up, right, I was always taught a minimum tip was 15%. And good service was something more than that.
Right.
And when I'm out to dinner and they still will give me a paper check, it shows that because, people can't do math, I guess, anymore. It'll
give you the
suggested what 15,
20,
18 and 20% is or whatever, right?
Right.
And then if I have a group of 6 or more, it says they automatically add an 18% gratuity.
Right.
So I don't even know if people know that, right? But I never tip less than, I think there's twice in my life that I've walked out without leaving a tip. And it was when, the service was horrible. The food wasn't, the orders weren't correct.
Right.
Nobody made any adjustments, and I'm talking about eating out twice a week, most of my life, probably, if not more so. Typically I tip between 20 and 30%. That's just
Right.
my normal is 20%. I mean, like you have to really screw up for me to leave you less than 20%. But if you're one of those where you say, well, it's a 6% charge automatically put on, you get to 6%.
Right.
Don't tell me what you're going to do. That's a control issue.
That sounds more like a personality
within the psychology thing, right? But I typically leave 25 to 30%. But now it's like, well, I just waited on you and got your hot dog for you at the hot dog stand. Here's the tip jar. What? That's what you're supposed to do. There was no service. You know what I'm saying? Many of these places, it's like, you walk into a coffee shop. What are they supposed to do? They're supposed to make you a coffee, right? That's not like over and above.
You might ask how it's changed. 16% of the 500 plus small businesses that were surveyed by an employee management software firm on behalf of the Wall Street Journal ask customers to leave a tip at checkout. 16% today. That's up from 6.2% in 2019.
So it's more than doubled since the pandemic.
Yep.
Okay. Which is why I see that all over the place.
Tips now increase wages for service workers by an average of 25% compared with 20% between 2019 and 2020, according to Gusto. In May, the average hourly service industry worker earned $16.64 an hour in base wages and $4.23 an hour in tips.
Yeah, I mean, we have a young person working for us, or who attends the youth center, who worked at a local Mexican place, and it wasn't a restaurant; it was a chain place. And he was surprised at the end of his first week, they handed him a $20 bill, and they said, "Well, what's this for?" "Well, that's your percentage of the tip money we got this week." And it's like, I frequent that restaurant, you know, 2 or 3 times a month. Never knew I had to leave a tip, because to me it's a fast food restaurant type place where I don't feel the need to tip. But he supplemented it, they supplemented their income with $20 a week while they worked there, basically in tips.
Yep.
Based off their, they only worked 15 to 20 hours a week there, so they were making an extra $1 an hour in tips.
So part of what happened is during the COVID-19 lockdowns, customers of many service businesses, right? Don't even think just restaurants and food, but also things like HVAC technicians, right? People were giving tips to these individuals.
Guilty as charged. I did that.
To acknowledge the risk that they were taking and still completing their job.
Yes.
However, the flip side of that is, okay, well now, it's started to hang around. Holding on to workers has become especially difficult in the services sector. Lodging and food service has had the highest quit rate for workers since July of 21, consistently above 4.9% per 3 months, according to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. The quit rate for the retail trade industry is around 3.3% so far this year. In May, the overall quit rate for workers was 2.6%, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So service industries represent a disproportionate number of people who quit their jobs, service industry jobs. Dan, who's the founder of Miami-based Flamingo Appliance Service, decided in 2020 to add an option for customers to tip his employees, reasoning that his home repair technicians were taking health risks by entering customers' homes during the pandemic. About 1/3 of customers now leave a tip between 10 and 20%, Dan said. The requests add an average of $650 a year to his 182 technicians' salaries, about 1% of their total yearly income. Rising cost, he said, persuaded him to retain the option after the pandemic abated. Were he to eliminate the gratuity prompt, he said, he would have to raise prices beyond the 18% he already has done since 2019, likely costing him clients. Within the food services industry, tips as a share of compensation are rising faster as limited service establishments such as bakeries and coffee shops than a full service one. So that what you were talking about, limited service establishments have been pushing tipping. course, the flip side to all this is the tip backlash. A May survey of about 2,400 Americans by financial services company Bankrate found that consumers are tipping less often than they did at the height of the pandemic. 41% of respondents said that businesses should pay their employees better rather than rely so much on tips. Roughly a third said tipping culture is out of hand.
But we've already, as the consumer, absorbed the cost of that person's job because the owner has said, I'll give you $6 an hour plus your tips.
Right. Well, because I'm counting.
Right.
And that's the problem, right? I'm counting on you getting at least 15% because it's expected, or 10% or whatever it might be, depending on.
And so if you do a good job and you hustle and you take care of,
right.
We turn the tables over and you take care of 4 to 6 tables of, 2 to 4 customers apiece, you should rake in this much money in tips. And then that takes you up to the $12, $15 an hour minimum wage job that you can get working at McDonald's. Or you'll do better than that, which is why you'll wait tables here because you'll make $20 an hour a night for when you include your tips. But we're not going to pay you that because we're going to expect you to make double or triple what I pay you in tips.
Right.
Correct? Because I've never worked that job. You have.
Yeah.
With what you're paid an hour, to meet minimum wage or to make it worth, you're expected to double or triple your wages in tips, right?
Yeah.
In order
pretty much. I mean, it depends.
To not go down to the local
different
fast
places
food and
do
work,
things
right?
differently, but yeah, it can be. And I think that's, I guess in my mind, if it was just up to me and I could do.
I mean, I remember my sisters made half of what minimum wage was when they waited tables.
Yep.
So if that's true today, that's why I threw out the $6 an hour. As a waiter or a waitress, as a service person, you're making $6 an hour. They're expecting you to make up the difference in tips.
I think it's one of those things where we could all probably be happier and there could be more stability. Again, if it was just up to me, I don't think this will happen. But, it's all full service establishments, right, where you're being waited on. It should be accepted that, the maximum tip ever allowed is 5%. And you are paid to deliver the level of service that your bosses expect you to deliver, and that should be reflected in the prices that you pay. Because at the end of the day, folks, it's the chicken and egg crap. It's the, the meal was $200, but then I'm going to add my tip and there's, another $40. And it's like, so why wasn't the meal just $240 then? Because it was like what came out of my bank account was $240, whether $40 was a tip or not. It doesn't, to you, the consumer, at the end of the day, how much went to tip and how much went to everything else, that is an immaterial component of your outlay.
And to your point, you would know that going in. That if I'm going to take myself and 3 other people to this establishment, it's going to cost me $250. Not, each meal costs $30 and everybody gets a $10 drink and a $10 dessert, and then I'm going to tip 20%. You just know up front that that's what you're going to spend.
Well, I would be.
And if the service is no good, you'll go to a restaurant whose prices are more or less, or who has better service, but you know up front what the cost.
Well, that it's
the
going to be
entire cost is going to be.
Yeah, it's going to be. It's just like the United States is one of the only countries in the world where sales tax isn't reflected in the price on the shelf, where it's not legally required to show you how much tax you're going to pay. Why? Because big business decided that, it makes things look cheaper. Well, yeah, it does, because that's not included. Just like you go to a restaurant and you look at the menu price and, this dish is $12. Yeah, but you have a tip with that because it's expected that you tip. So it's not a $12 dish, and everybody that's led you to believe this, the consumers get duped, right? And it doesn't benefit the service workers. If I was the person running the restaurant, I would just have a sign that says, at this establishment, we expect, the expectation that you should have coming in here is we will provide you with excellent service. If a server goes above and beyond, we welcome optional tips capped at this amount. We never expect a tip. because our people are paid to not need tips. They are paid like the professionals they are to deliver quality service. And if they don't, then they're fired, because that's how we do it here, you know? And I think
it's an interesting concept.
Some people would say, well, yeah, but then, you know, it's going to be hard to find workers because, you know, they won't, they'll not like that they don't get, you know, extra tips. Well, no, because you're paying a higher based wage. I would rather have the certainty than be like, oh, you know, well, maybe I'll make really good money in tips. Why not just pay?
It was a slow night tonight, or nobody got drinks, and so I didn't make very much in tips.
Yeah.
I actually
having
made less
worked
right.
with people in that industry, and I was always back of house, so always in the kitchen. But having worked with that degree of unknown, you know, and that the way that it affects mood, and just, you know, well, we're not busy, so I'm not making any money tonight, so I don't want to be here. And then when you do have people there, the service is probably less than because you're in a bad mood, because you know you're not going to make very much money. And is it even worth my time being here? And why do I have this job? And is that, you know, I mean, it's this whole crapshoot that you could just avoid it. You could just avoid it.
You wouldn't have to hit your watch and say you're in a bad mood because there were no customers tonight at 8 o'clock.
Yeah. If Justin's king of the world, I immediately require that prices everywhere reflect tax that's included, you know, and that businesses not be allowed to reflect menu prices that don't factor in some kind of whatever the expected tip for that industry is, if we're going to keep tipping. Or I would just eliminate tipping except for exceptional service beyond the expectation. Here's what the expectations are. You did more than that. I want to compliment you. That's a good reason to give a tip. It's not a good reason to give 15% because you feel bad that your person who's working will go home with inadequate money if you don't give them at least 15%. Why we have this show today, Lance? Is there a reason? Rail against the machine?
Basically.
Okay.
But also because here at True Chat we have a mission, and that mission
also because that.
Yeah, there is that. You know, because they pay the check, they write the checks without tips. But if you want to, if you want to send tips,
hey, yeah, never mind. Forget everything I said. We're gonna add a new tip button so that you can, so that when you like what we say, you can tip.
Right,
that's right.
You can just hit the tip.
That'd be fun. We could have a competition then. Who gets the most tips?
Which, well, I would like.
But see, how would that skew how we do the show?
Right.
You know what I mean? And it'd be easy to say, no, it wouldn't.
I couldn't say this next part about honest and open conversations
because
we'd be working for the dollar, right?
Right. Well, and we are, but what we say is not having an impact on. Well, if we don't like what you say, you're going to get less money this show, and if we like what you say, you're going to get more money. You know.
So if you like the fact that we're honest and open and are teaching you things with that conversation, the only thing we ask is we don't ask for any extra money. Just tell your family and friends so that they too would can listen to the show. And if they would like to listen to it without getting it secondhand from you, tell them that they can find us as a podcast on Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and everywhere podcasts are found.
The State of Us releases new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday, first thing in the morning as a podcast. Those same episodes are heard on the weekends on AM and FM radio stations across the United States and parts of Canada. For The State of Us, I'm Justin T. Weller.
I'm Lance Jackson.
Special thanks to producer Bradley Butch, and thank you all, our audience, for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Be the change. Be sure to check out our website, thestateofus.org, for books, articles, and all the ways to tune in. thestateofus.org.